Okay, everybody, I think I figured out the problem. My iPad might have been too close to my phone and it might have been giving feedback. So we're going to try this again. I wanted to get on the line with Susan Matthews, who is with Slate Magazine, who wrote a piece that was quite comprehensive on vaccinated people, basically being diagnosed with COVID and kind of what is the scoop on that. And so I'm going to get her back and also get Jeremy on. Let's see, I can get both of them at the same time. Let's see if this works, everyone. Sorry about that. I think it's because my iPad was right next to my phone. Hi. Oh, look,
Hey,
this. I love it when a plan comes together. Anyway, can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, I think my iPad was too close and I'd written, actually my colleague Julia had written a lot of key points from Susan's article and from other articles that are starting to run. Do you guys feel like the public, all that there's been enough guidance for people on the new phase of COVID in terms of the risks for people who are vaccinated as well as obviously unvaccinated? Jeremy, what do you think of that?
okay, I think that the guidance is inadequate because we're still learning this. I think it's just way too soon to know how this out. I think that, by the way, Susan and I go like way so Susan's article is awesome. That's how it comes back from her. And it's comprehensive in the sense of like all the questions that are currently like just ascending. And actually, Katie, what you started to ask me last week when we did this, and even when we were talking before and after, you were sort of asking like, wait, what do we know? What do we not know? And I was kind of like, you're asking all the right questions because the answers aren't out there. And I think that Susan's piece is so great on the idea of risk tolerance. And I think we should talk through some of the scenarios, but I think that, yes, you're right that it's confusing because I think we're all trying to like run to catch the moving train.
Well, one thing I thought was interesting, Susan, that you pointed out, and I had heard that that experts are only keeping track of vaccinated people who have been hospitalized, who died. So, like Kat Sadler, who I interviewed last week, Susan, there's no record that he got COVID. So there doesn't seem to be a system for vaccinated people who got the virus. And I have to say, and Jeremy, maybe you can put this in. Well, first of all, let me ask Susan. You quoted a Harvard epidemiologist who was sort of upset about that. Why are they doing it? They just not have the tools to track people who stay home and have COVID?
So I don't really know why they're doing it. I mean, I think it's important to note that it's at the CDC level. So there are definitely some like state levels that maybe could start tracking this. I think that the reason they're doing it is because the cases that are the most important are the ones that are that result in hospitalizations and deaths. So it's understandable if they want to prioritize the most important things that's what they want to look at. But I do think, particularly now that we're all in this current state of wondering, wait, what is the actual percentage the percentage chance that I could get a breakthrough case? And like nobody really has a clear answer of that. I think that's a really good reason why we should start tracking it. And actually, I didn't put this in to the piece, but my colleague's wife had tested positive, and she got a call from like the New York State health authorities or something asking her questions about her case. And at one point she said, "Oh, I'm vaccinated." And they were like, "You're vaccinated? We don't know anything about that." And I think that's kind of pretty indicative of where we are right now, where everything is kind of changing, and it feels really scary, but we also know a lot that is reassuring, which is what Jeremy can talk about, which is that in his hospital he's not seeing so many vaccinated people coming in really sick, and that's the most important thing.
Well, can you give us some insight on that? And also what the vaccines are only a certain amount. I mean, what, 86% effective? You can talk to us about that. So does that mean 14% of people who get vaccinated will not be protected against the virus, Jeremy?
Yeah, so tons to do here. Okay, so the first thing is the CDC. Like, why are they doing what they're doing? And no one said anything, but I have a feeling that it comes down to this. imagine if we were back at a time where we had 300,000 cases a day, right? That's bad at one point. Even with that, it would take 1,000 days to get through this for everyone to get exposed to this, right? Because there's 230 million people, assuming that, no one's vaccinated, or at least some degree of protection doesn't get you, you have protection, but not completely sterilizing immunity, meaning you have some protection. So they're not going to track this for 10 years. There's no way. And so what they're trying to do is to follow the most important things they can, just to say, is there a variant that's all of this vaccination? So there's the reason piece, but also just the time. Like, we're not going to be following every flu, every RSV, and every other virus you can name that causes an illness. You're going to track ones that cause really safety concerns, right? So that's number one. The second thing to your question is, what I just mean? Well, first of all, there's the alpha, beta, and delta, and each vaccine is doing different things. So we're learning about this. So we now know that delta is kind of evading some of the vaccine immunity. So that the people, I don't have the exact numbers, but it goes from, with alpha was like, or original strain, I should say, 95, 99% of people weren't going to get hospitalized, infected. Now it's like in the high 80s for the mRNAs. So yeah, that means if it's an infection, there's a 10% chance that you would actually notice it. You'd have illness, that you actually feel crappy. So that's about right.
Hey, Jeremy, you're breaking up a little bit. I don't know if you can move it a bit or if you can.
Let me try.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Okay.
Hold on.
And I'm sure my mic isn't covered, so I'm going to hold it like this. Modern technology. Your audio, Susan, is great, by the way. But listen, according to the CDC, as of July 12th, 5,189 vaccinated people have been hospitalized with COVID, and 1,093 have died. Now, 1,456 were asymptomatic. They were diagnosed when they were in the hospital for something else. So I guess the question is, honestly, I know that's not a very big number, but I found that a little disconcerting. Am I crazy, Susan?
I think that the really tough thing about this one is that we're going to have to start thinking about, there are lots of things in the world that are dangerous. And we've spent the past year and a half, dramatically reorienting our lives around COVID. And so the question now is, it's going to take longer than we've had so far for the vaccines to really do the work that they can do to help us start getting toward a place of herd immunity. It's going to take time of people getting more vaccinated. It's going to take time, just like in general, in a lot of ways. Herd immunity is a long-term goal. And so the question starts to be, what is it that we can live with? We talked so much in the very beginning part of the pandemic about the comparisons to the flu and the fact that we do live with that, and it's scary. But in most of the time, it's not really a factor. So I think that one of the things that's so confusing about what's happening right now is that we're starting to reorient toward how much major precaution can we take. And the thing that I think is the most important about what I thought about when I was reporting this article and talking to doctors I'm fully vaccinated was, we've learned so much about the small things that we can do to lower our chances of getting sick. And so even if those numbers are scary, and even if you really, really want to go back to normal and you think that you can because you're fully vaccinated, it's not really a big deal to still wear a mask on the subway. It's not that big of a deal to wear a mask in the grocery store. And there are very low level things that we can do that I think will go a lot further than we think. And I understand that there's the desire to just be done and go to a dance club and make out with a stranger. But I think that we're in this period where, as much as we want to be done with everything, there are small things that we can still do that are just going to do a lot of good.
Somebody just said, well, why get the vaccine? And that is such an important question, because the last thing we want to do is discourage people. And in fact, many, many more people really need the vaccine. But Jeremy, I don't know why I sound screwed up too, but can you talk about how important it is to get the vaccine?
Yeah, and how's it sound right now? Is it better?
It is a little better.
Okay. the main reason to get the vaccine is that I'm tired of people who are not vaccinated. I'm just tired of it. I don't want to put people on breathing machines anymore. And ever since we've had high rates of vaccination in Massachusetts, I haven't had to do that. So that's personally just like I don't want to put people in comas and risk their lives. And vaccination has been the number one way to. What I think is really interesting in the numbers is this idea, and my sound still okay? Is it okay?
It's okay. Not great, but it's okay. I think mine's worse than all of you. So
I'll go extra slow, and I'm not good at that. The hospital numbers that Susan was mentioning, there's actually a graphic that one of my colleagues, her name is Kristen Pantagani, and she put a graphic on Twitter, and it's brilliant because what it shows is that as vaccination rates go up, overall hospitalizations come way down. We know all that, right? But what's interesting is the kind of what we might call an Israel effect, which is that the more people are vaccinated, when you get to a place where almost everyone, the only people left to get hospitalized are the vaccinated. And so the percent of the pie that's vaccinations that's going to the hospital is actually high because that's their target. But the overall number is so much lower, but the pie chart looks scary. So it's this weird thing we have to like readjust your mind and say, wait a second, thousands of hospitalizations among vaccinated people sound scary. But it's like, well, yeah, but it would have been 100 times that if we hadn't had vaccines. So it's this weird kind of cognitive backflip you have to do to get there. But it's super important to realize that as those numbers come down, that's the more important thing. Is overall, like the hospitals are not full where I work. It's great. And that's why I want people to get vaccinated.
what about the Delta variant, Susan? What did you learn about why that's particularly contagious? And my daughter told me, and this wasn't confirmed, but that the rapid test does not pick up the Delta variant. I don't know if that's true or not, but can you shed some light on that?
So the thing about we are still figuring out exactly why Delta is more contagious. But what I've heard, and Jeremy can fact check me on this, is that it just replicates to mount this response. It's replicating quickly, so you're still getting a little bit sicker. And the other thing, ER anymore, but the other reason why getting vaccinated is so important is because the variants that we're seeing are the result of the virus from spreading is for people to get vaccinated. And so the quicker we do that, the fewer variants we're going to have to deal with, whether it's Delta or the ones that are coming down the line.
Jeremy, the rapid and PCR test picks up the Delta variant?
Yes, as far as I know, there's no problem with that. And I actually think that I've been thinking a lot about this since you asked me about what to do about this. And I really do think that since the CDC is not reporting all the cases, one of the great things we could do differently right now would be to do more rapid tests. Because if you're worried that you have an infection, a breakthrough infection, and you're worried that it's contagious, the rapid antigen test is the best way to know that, because the PCR test will be positive for weeks and you're not going to stay home, but you're only going to be positive for the antigen at that time when you're contagious. So I really think that, yes, it still works for Delta, and we've just underutilized it. It's kind of crazy. And actually, if I can grab one, I have rapid antigen tests with me. And I actually did one on myself the other day. It's so easy. And if I was positive, I would know it. And if I were contagious, I would stay away from people who were at risk. So I think it's a big, big thing we need to do.
So can people, you can't purchase the rapid test now, can you? And it's going to try to come back, everybody. Don't worry.
I think that actually it's interesting. I didn't purchase it. I don't know. It was given to me. There's one test that's approved outside of healthcare settings, as far as I know. And then there's a bunch more that have not been approved for reasons that kind of evade me. Like from experts I've spoken to, they really should have been. It's a place where there might be some sketchiness there. I don't really know yet, but I think that we should all be asking for rapid tests because the PCR tests take too long to get back. You know, remember in January.
Grab your rapid test, Jeremy, because people are asking what it looks like, even though people probably on this have gotten rapid tests. So I'll talk to you and entertain you guys. While go ahead, Jeremy, and actually, let me see if Susan can come back. Here's Slate again. I'm sorry about the technical problems, everybody. I apologize, but we're doing our best here. See, there's. Sorry, Susan, got kicked off somehow. We've had this many technical problems, so I want to apologize to everybody. I'm not sure. A lot of people too are asking about boosters. We've heard some talk about boosters, especially for the J&J shot. Can you guys kind of explain that?
I'm gonna go give a shot at giving a slightly different answer to the booster question, which I think is something else that I also hit on in my piece. Like, the most effective thing that you could do if you're worried about coronavirus and you're vaccinated right now is try to convince people who aren't vaccinated to get vaccinated. Like, boosters are going to be an important thing, but one of the things that I hit on in my piece that I think is really important is that, and this has been the case the entire time with the pandemic, there are some people who are really worried about this and are spending so much of their time and energy on trying to figure out how to do absolutely everything right. And then there are some people who are just not thinking about it nearly as much. And so my answer to the booster question right now, and Jeremy can give the more scientific answer, is a little bit more psychological. And it's that if you're doing your best, if you're already vaccinated, you can wait for the advice from medical professionals of when you can get the booster. You can mask, you can distance, you can be outside as much as possible, you can do all that. But the most meaningful thing that you could do is try to convince unvaccinated people in your life to get vaccinated.
That's easier said than done, though, Susan. I mean, that's a very difficult. I'm going to turn off these comments because I think they're distracting for people. And I've got a lot of questions from that I picked up from social media. I mean, this is the problem. And, you know, it's interesting because a lot of healthcare providers, Jeremy, are just getting so pissed off. They're seeing younger people come into the hospital and they're seeing very, very sick people saying, oh, my God, I should have gotten the vaccine. You know, I mean, I think that is such a sad commentary with someone saying, I would, you know, if only. And, you know, I think it's just very, very frustrating for healthcare workers to see these young people especially come in very sick and have to be put on ventilators. And unfortunately, they're getting so much false information. You know, Dr. Fauci said we wouldn't have cured polio if we lived in the current environment of misinformation. People would not have taken the polio vaccine. We wouldn't have eradicated that disease. So, you know, I'm on a commission to deal with disinformation, and it's just so frustrating the kind of garbage that people are spewing out there and the kind of absurd claims they're making. And it's scaring people. And that's a problem that's bigger than all of us. But how do you, Jeremy, what do you think is psychologically the best way to get people to go ahead and get vaccinated?
Okay. Tom Frieden, who was the former CDC director, had a really great point about this. I heard him say a couple of weeks ago, or maybe longer. Time is a very strange thing these days. And basically what he said is, look, you have the movable middle, and that's your first target. And yes, that middle is getting smaller and smaller, and you're left with the people who won't do it. But I still think that there's enough people in the middle who are sort of on the fence that that's your number one target, because those people will then get the vaccine. They'll notice that it's safe. They'll notice that they're not dead, and then their neighbors who, you know, aren't vaccinated see someone get sick who isn't protected, and they'll put the pieces together. And so go for those folks. How do you get the people, though, who are that movable middle? It's the things that we know, but then I think the real important thing is that most people who are kind of on the fence aren't going to go to great lengths to get this vaccine. So if you're not sure, you're not going to waste half your day to get an appointment and line up and go to the thing. You know, one of my favorite Onion things ever was they were like arguments against vaccinations. This was in general, just for all vaccinations. And the number one reason that people don't want to get a vaccination was you have to go to a place. And people just don't like to do that. to go and just kind of be inconvenienced. So we need to have EMS going door to door like they're doing in some places, like in New York. We need to have it at fire stations, because there's a fire station in every jurisdiction. There are actually pharmacy deserts all over the country.
Yeah.
If you live in like Beverly Hills, there's like 17 pharmacies, but if you live in the middle of nowhere or a part of the city that's not as well funded, they don't have it. So we need to go where the people are. So doctors' offices, pediatricians are very trusted. So that's how I get to the movable middle, is to pick off those folks who kind of just make it easier for them. And then you can kind of go towards the people who are still holding out.
What are people saying to you, Susan, about that? Because what I wanted to point out, excuse me for interrupting, is that 97% of hospitalizations for COVID are for unvaccinated individuals, because I don't want anyone to feel misled by the earlier number I gave, because clearly that's quite a small percentage of the hospitalizations that are going on. And I think they're going on in states like Alabama and Arkansas. And I think Florida has a very high rate of hospitalizations, I think. But Susan, what have you've been talking to a lot of medical experts, and I know one was quoted as saying understanding breakthrough cases was going to be really important. But getting back to convincing people to get vaccinated, what are they saying is the most effective way to do that?
Well, I think that what Jeremy said is totally right. And one thing that I found kind of in past reporting about vaccination too is that it's really, I think in some ways it's almost tempting to focus on anti-vaxxers, because there's sort of an annoyance element there. Like, it is very frustrating, and it's not that I don't feel that. I definitely do. But when I was doing some reporting before the pandemic, just about the other vaccines that we take, one of the numbers that I thought was so fascinating is that when you look at the unvaccinated people in the US around measles, like half of the reasons that they give, half of them give the reason that they don't want to get vaccinated, and for half of them, it's a healthcare access question. So I totally agree with Jeremy that like the easiest thing that you can do is like offer to babysit so that somebody can go get their vaccine. Like making things easier for people is a really big deal. And then the other ways in which we're going to convince people who are actually skeptical, I think, even as frustrating as it is, I think that listening to people and letting them actually explain why they're worried, instead of just bombarding them with kind of the fear-based, like you could end up as one of these people in the hospital, is much more effective. I think that, nobody imagines that that's going to be them. That's why they haven't done it yet, I think, is the issue. And so I have family members who are wondering if they're going to get vaccinated. And I think that they're going to have to be, the next conversation I think is going to be about vaccine passports, and if you're willing to see people who are unvaccinated, and how you deal with that, and how you address that in your personal life to kind of make it a convincing thing that, like, I really need you to be vaccinated in order to have you over for dinner. Like, you can make it a little bit more of a carrot than a stick, I think, in certain ways.
And what do you think of the idea of having employers require their employees to get vaccinated? Are there legal problems with that in any way, shape, or form that you know of, Susan?
So there are definitely going to be situations where some people can't get vaccinated for actual legitimate medical reasons.
I understand that, but if you don't have an exemption.
Yeah, I think if you don't have an exemption, that's where we're going. And I think that right now we're in this situation where in the US, we haven't quite had to start dealing with that yet. And it's the kind of thing that's going to happen on a state by state level. And so I'm really curious to see what states are the first ones that are willing to start talking about it and experimenting with how that actually works. The logistics of, an employer-based one is one option, but in order to go to a hockey game, you have to show proof of your vaccination. Like, that could be another thing that we start to do that isn't quite so harmful to people's ability to live their lives, but is really influential to how they want to live their lives, and could go a very long way. Because right now you go into bars and restaurants and stores, and it's like a voluntary thing. It says, if you're unvaccinated, please still mask up. And I just think that that's kind of the backwards way to do it. If you're unvaccinated, you're not the one who's thinking so much about wearing the mask.
What, some people are asking, Jeremy, about going to outdoor concerts, traveling, indoor. Somebody else asked about eating at an indoor restaurant. My in-laws aren't vaccinated. How at risk are newborns and young kids when they're around unvaccinated adults? I mean, I think there's so much confusion out there. And, what kind of practical advice, Jeremy, would you give people who are just like, what do we do?
Okay. The one thing that's so difficult here is that if we tell people carrot and stick, I think that's so important, by the way, so important. Just as a side thing, they've studied this. Like, if Barack Obama goes up there and says, I got vaccinated to get vaccinated, Democrats would listen. Like, Democrats are highly interested in that what their political leaders tell them is safe. They have trust. There is an actual sort of part of the DNA of being a conservative is to sort of have a little bit of a distrust for authority. And even when the authority figures are doing the vaccination, they say, they're just doing that for show. It's sort of an independent thinker kind of movement. And so it could backfire, if Trump goes up there and says, I got vaccinated. So everyone criticized him for not doing that so publicly. But actually, it's from a public health perspective, I'm not sure it would have made a difference. What the research shows is people on the right are much more interested in carrot and stick. So if you get vaccinated, you can take off the mask, even if that means with a variant, there's a breakthrough possibility. But hey, you know what? We got the vaccine. We got 80-90% of the way there. That might be worth doing. So that's one piece. Carrots and sticks, really big thing. And we have to be careful. We only have so much ask. We can't just ask people all the time to do stuff. We got to save it for when it's real bad. So yes, in a perfect world, like in the Matrix, I'd say, we have Delta, get the mask back on. But in the real world, I'm thinking about the next variant. I'm thinking about the next virus. And if I make a 2% difference here, a 10% difference here by getting everyone to mask in every situation, but they're just tired of hearing it from me at some point, then I'm screwed when the next one comes around and they're tired of listening to me. So,
but I mean, listen, I'm going to probably wear a mask when I go to the grocery store, and when I go to the drugstore. If I'm on the subway, I think I would wear a mask now, just because why not? It's easy. I've got a lot of cute ones. I can just pull them out and just start wearing them again. And I don't know, until there's more information, I feel like that's the smartest thing to do. What about outdoor concerts, though? What about traveling?
Yep.
What advice would you give people? Because they want to get out and do things again. And as Susan said, they want to go to a bar and make out with somebody, although Jeremy and I are happily married, Susan.
Yeah. But my version of that was to write that piece about going to see concerts now, like go and do it, right? Because now is that I worry that we're in a window that it could get worse later, because if the vaccines end up, if some new variant messes us all up, right? So here's my feeling. It's all situational. There's a million variations to this question, but broad strokes, I think outdoors is pretty safe. I don't think you have to wear a mask outdoors unless you're really in a very crowded environment. Look, eventually everything goes outdoors, right? We're living on this earth, right? And things get, diffracted and diffused into the atmosphere. But so if I'm walking down the street in Union Square in New York, and it's Union Square, like, at this busiest, I might throw the mask on. But if it's a kind of a usual day in New York where, there's not bumper to bumper people, I'm not so worried about it. And again, it's sort of like, there's just this idea of like, if we ask people to do everything, they'll just do nothing. So, and then when it comes to other things like, if you're going to go to a restaurant, well, maybe, yeah, if you're going to go to a restaurant once in a while, is it all restaurant? Is it 300 people packed in? Is it a bar? Is it a makeout fest, that we're talking about with these dance situations that I am no longer a part of? Kids do. Then yeah, you want to wear the mask. So to me, it's always been, actually, this comes back to a Slate piece that I wrote like a year ago about like the math of exposure, right? Like if you're in an area that has relatively low case counts and you encounter a relatively low number of people, your odds of getting exposed are low to begin with. But the minute the case counts are up, it only takes a couple of hundred people interacting with a day until like the likelihood of you being exposed becomes high. So my feeling is, if you don't know the situation, if it's crowded, you don't know if everyone's vaccinated, yeah, I'm putting the mask on when I go to a sporting event, for example. If I went to a hockey game indoors, I would wear a mask right now. Baseball game outdoors, it's kind of on top of each other. I probably would, because again, like you said, why not? I don't see the harm in that, and there's no reason not to. But if someone said, do I really have to? I'd say maybe not in that situation. But indoors, look, I was in the airport today. That place was a zoo, and I was double masking in the airport today because it just was crowded, and I just felt like these are a bunch of people who may not have gotten the memo.
And someone actually asked about, should I be scared to fly or be in an airport? And I think these are mostly vaccinated people who are asking these questions. Someone else asked, is it true that most of the vaccinated deaths are people who are 65 or over?
Well, I don't. The average age of death has come down over time because such a high number of people who are older are vaccinated. I don't know if that's true about the vaccinated breakthrough cases. Airplanes are interesting. I was talking to my friend Joe Allen today. He's the air guru at Harvard, and HEPA filters and everything about air is Joe's thing. And I was like, Joe, like, how come there haven't been clusters on planes? I thought there would be. And he says, oh, no. The planes are the best because it's vertical. The air is being recycled constantly, and it's dry as hell in there, and everyone's wearing a mask, and it's actually not that many people. He's much more worried about other environments like a conference where it's sort of horizontal and everyone's packed in and people are coming and going. So the airplanes actually may not be the worst. The airports might be the problem. So yeah, I think flying has been, to me, there have been outbreaks or clusters, but honestly, the exception proves the rule. We haven't seen a lot of that.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a little breaking up, so if I'm breaking up, please let me know and I'll let you guys keep talking.
You're fine. You're good.
Okay, great. I wanted to say one thing about masks because I think that we definitely say, like, it's not that big of a deal to wear a mask. But one thing that I experienced, particularly in the last couple weeks, particularly as everyone has really been feeling like, oh my goodness, we're done, is that it actually does feel really weird to be like the only person wearing a mask in a place. And I sort of think like trains and airports and airplanes where you still have to wear a mask, it's like almost easier to do it in those places. And
Yeah.
And so I think that that's really important. I wanted to say I'm in Charlottesville, Virginia, actually,
Yeah.
Katie.
Wow.
And one of the things that I have been fascinated by the whole time is like I'm really close to the UVA campus. UVA was so insistent that everyone wear masks all the time. And so when that was still in place, I just didn't even have to think about it. And I never felt weird like walking around outside wearing a mask, even though I don't think that you do have to wear a mask outside. Like it was just kind of the norm. And so I think that one thing that I think is really important right now is we can accept that the pandemic is getting better. We can accept that like this is we're going in the right direction, we hope, probably, but it's still just not that big of a deal to wear masks. And so we can just decide to do it and decide to like deal with that slight discomfort and just say, this is what I'm doing. Because right now I'm at a hockey game with a ton of people that I don't know if that are vaccinated, or I'm at this, walking into this restaurant or doing all these different things.
Can I ask a sort of, maybe this is a Captain Obvious question that I just thought of, but are the people who aren't vaccinated the ones that are kind of responsible for people who are vaccinated getting breakthrough cases?
Kinda, yeah. I mean, look, I don't like to point fingers and blame. It's not really about that. Well, it just doesn't help, right? I mean, it's like someone comes in with a heart attack. I'm not like, why did you have the extra burger? You know what I mean?
But if somebody is force feeding their brother, cheeseburger, and their cholesterol is off the charts, then you kind of feel Munchausen by proxy or whatever, right?
I mean, look, I think that yes, the sort of my body, my choice situation. I can do whatever I want. That's a little, to me, that strikes me as a little bit un-American. Like, don't we look out for each other? Like, don't we help? Aren't we willing to make sacrifices? I mean, think about the Greatest Generation. They like flew over to Europe to die for us, and like we're not willing to throw a mask on. We're not willing to get a little shot that like might give you like man flu for a day or two. And I, as you know, like I was laid out. Like I didn't love the vaccine. I don't know. I'll never know. I must have been exposed at some point because I had a pretty nice couple days of like being miserable. But I felt afterwards great. It's like, okay, I protect myself, I protect my family, I protect the person down the street. Can you imagine how you'd feel if you found out that you were the reason that someone got sick? I wouldn't want to be part of it. Which leads me to, I'm going to do a rapid antigen test on myself now. you want. So, by the way, this is the home kit. I take no money from anyone on this. This was given to me by a guy who studies tests. So this is the whatever Care Start. Who cares? The point is, you stick this thing in your nose, you stick it in a vial, you shake it around, you drop it. I'll show you how it works. I'm supposed to go pretty far back. So if I start coughing, I apologize.
Poke it all the way up to your brain.
Hold on.
This is really fun, Jeremy. Of course you're doing this.
Right now. Told me that if that didn't happen, I can do it right. Because it's actually horizontal. It's supposed to go to the level of your ear. And I got there. How's everyone doing? Okay, so then I take the vial here, and I dip it in. This is like science class. And you just rotate it 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, da, 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 da. And then they told me that you squeeze it out. This is a little plastic container that's actually flexible. You squeeze out, you just kind of milk it, if you will. And that way it all gets out. And then this thing goes in the trash. And then here comes your little cap, your little cappy cap here thing.
Okay.
And then I just flick it. I gotta mix it up. Looks very official, right?
Yeah.
Yes, good. Do that. And then
what if it showed you had COVID right now?
What?
What if it showed you had COVID right now?
That'd be amazing because I'm supposed to do something tonight and I wouldn't go. It would change behavior. And that is the point, is that this is actionable, right? If I have COVID that's like gonna be contagious in 5 days from now, this might be negative, but who cares because I can go out right now. If I have COVID that's positive and that's positive on this antigen test, which is a test that tests like if there's actually a virus that's like contagious in my face, I can't go out. I gotta hunker down. So all I do is to put this thing down for 10 minutes. So we gotta wait 10 minutes, and then when that we'll still be here in 10 probably. But if not, I'll just invert it onto this little thing and then drop it onto the little dropper where it says there.
Uh-huh.
And it's like a pregnancy test, right? There's a line that's supposed to show up if it worked, if the test is working, and the other line if there's another line, you're positive, and if there's not another line, you're negative. So, if you've ever done a pregnancy test, it's pretty much the same shtick. And in fact, it's similar technology. So,
well, what about some people are saying we won't test as much because then then we'll overreact. If someone's asymptomatic, we'll shut things down. There's always this kind of balance between, making sure people live and also making sure that they have their livelihoods. So, is there any kind of risk in over testing? I don't know. I know that's sort of a moral and philosophical question. Susan, I'm sure you've considered that.
Well, I think that the issue here is, I think that has to do with the fact that it's not that over testing would necessarily be bad. It would be really good for us to actually have that information. The question is, what are we going to do with that information? So I want to say one thing, which is when my colleague came into Slack and told this story, there were a bunch of people who also had colds, who had this feeling of like, oh, do I have COVID? Like, what's going to happen now? And again, like, the main thing that came across to me when I was talking to him was just his feeling of embarrassment or shame that he could get people sick. And so one, I think, clear takeaway is kind of what Jeremy was just saying. He's going to find this out based on this test, but like, one thing that we should definitely do after this pandemic is when we're sick, we should take care of ourselves and stay home and not force ourselves to still go out to dinner and do all these things. Like, we can do testing to figure out if it's COVID or not. As we get closer and closer to like being a little bit more okay with mild COVID, you'll know if you have mild COVID was one of the main lessons of my piece. It's going to be it's going to be worse than a bad cold. But I think that there's a lot that we can do with information that doesn't necessarily require everyone to go back down into lockdown, but just helps us make better choices that will just continue to do the same things to slow the spread. And we know so many of those things already. We've learned during this pandemic that if you're sick, you should really try to avoid touching other people and talking at them and doing all those things. Like those are not enormous asks. That doesn't mean that schools have to close and offices have to close and all of the things that shut down during this pandemic shut down. Like, the thing that I learned the most in reporting this piece is that we might start to get toward a new phase of living with this, where people who have it act in very specific ways. When you're around mixed vaccinated status crowds, you act in a slightly different way. And the rest of the time you can basically live your life because you're not like, you don't have the same concern of spreading it to all these people and actually putting them at higher risk of death. Like that's the biggest thing that we've gotten past, and that's really important. Like that's a big one.
Hey,
Yeah.
I have a quick question. You know, we have the Delta variant now. Are we seeing other variants pop up? Is there a Lambda variant? And is this virus going to continue to mutate? And is it possible that one of these mutations will not be covered by the vaccine that we've all gotten? Not to be like Debbie Downer, but
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And the answer is there are other variants. We're watching them. There's Lambda, there's Gamma, I think, and there's all these different ones. And right now, we don't know what they all mean. And so there's variants that we're observing. There's variants of concern. But so far, we have been lucky that these vaccines have worked, at least, in some degree, if not in great degree. So we need to not give the virus more chances to mutate. Look, we know we can get infected with this even with you're vaccinated, but we all think in the community that those infections, not only are they milder, but they probably don't last as long. They probably aren't contagious as long, which means that your body kills that sucker off quicker, which actually decreases the likelihood that your infection could lead to a mutation. So that's actually one of the things I think is so important, is that it's not just that getting a breakthrough case is mild. It might be contagious for a hot second, but not for the whole 10 days we think it is. And that's your other question, Katie, was so great. Like, is there a risk of overtesting because people don't want to know and all these things? I think if you overtest, quote unquote, or test a ton with these rapids, you actually can shorten the window for people and say, look, you're not even contagious after 6, 7, 8 days. There's actually great new data showing. And you can give someone, again, the carrot stick, like the incentive. Look, if you get the PCR test as positive 3 weeks after you're infected, what are you going to do with that information? You don't even know if you're contagious unless you've got the cycle threshold reported to you. And even then, that's kind of hard to interpret. This would say, look, we do a ton of rapid testing all the time. We can at least tell you, look, are you contagious? And that's what people want to know. Are they at risk? Because it's like, look, if you can actually shorten your time quarantining because we know you're not contagious, wouldn't that be great? So I think there's that. But I think I agree, Susan, we've changed the way we behave. Katie and I are a member of an exclusive club called the Over Touching of Your Face Anonymous. Like I know you told me that. And I was like, yeah, me too, Katie. I was like, we're the same.
well, most people do actually. I touch my hair much
better. Haven't you gotten better?
Huh?
Haven't you gotten better though?
Kind of, yeah. But I do feel like I need to continue to wash my hands more. I'm not as conscious about washing my hands as I was. I've kind of gone back to my old habits. And I do think that we just have to be smart. And colds, I mean, you reduce your chance of getting a cold if you wash your hands. According to University of Virginia research from a while ago, colds are transmitted through hands. And so I also think, I kind of get a little freaked out when people shake my hand, because I'm like, do you really have to shake my hand? I don't really want to shake your hand.
There's we don't have to go back to handshaking. Like at least not yet. I just think that we've existed so long in the space of I can't do anything, or oh my God, now I can do everything. And I just think it's so much more reasonable to think, okay, I'm still going to do these smart things that are pretty low lift, that aren't that hard. And like that can be enough. But I wanted to say one other thing about the vaccination rates, because we've been talking a lot about the US and about anti-vaxxers in the US. Like the other thing that we all know and that we've learned with the variants and that we've learned with this pandemic is that it's a public health issue and it's a global health issue. And so in addition to like the things that we can do, making sure that the rest of the world gets vaccines and gets vaccinated is also actually really important to our future and our likelihood of having to deal with these variants in the future, beyond being the morally right thing to do, to do as much as we can to make sure that.
How are we doing on that front, Jeremy? Are we making the vaccine available to countries that are really, I mean, like, gosh, haven't even heard about India that much recently, which just was absolutely drowning in COVID cases. Where are we on making the vaccine available to some of these countries?
Yeah, there was a big push about a month ago about this, and the Biden administration, I think, heard the kind of public health urgency about that. I think a lot of experts spoke out about that, and I think it made a difference. They did some things that I think make a difference. I can't tell you off the top of my head like what the curve has been, but what I can tell you is that, look, the one thing America did right was the vaccine rollout. In a sense, we had some pretty rough times in the beginning, but overall, right, if you want the vaccine right now, you can get it. Like that's America at its best. And the rest of the world is catching up. You look at a place like India, where I think they still have under 10% of their population vaccinated, although probably if you look at the ages, it's, you know, the higher risk people are starting to get some protection. And you even look at like wealthy countries like Japan, you know, the Olympics, and their rates are coming up too. So I think that, you know, some places need our help, some places just have their own issues. It's getting better every day, but I think that I could think of no better way to even spend our own money would be than on that project, because keep us safe and no more variants, or being able to travel anywhere you want in the world, being able to do commerce anywhere in the world. I mean, in terms of every aspect of health, this sort of we're not safe until everyone is safe, I buy that. So I think that the Biden administration has taken steps, but I don't yet know what the actionable sort of like change in the curve is. I know that there's been some improvement.
And I want to say something. I'm curious what you think about this, Jeremy, but I think that there's also like a really important harm reduction way of looking at this, and not letting like the perfect be the enemy of the much better. So I got the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. I haven't gotten a booster shot. I probably won't get a booster shot like until it's definitely recommended, but my feeling is it's still pretty effective. And it would be so much better if way more people had a pretty effective vaccine than if a bunch of Americans had 3 vaccines by this time next year, is my feeling. So I'm curious, like, Jeremy, you can fact check me on that, but that's my personal feeling.
Yeah, third dose is going to be necessary for immune compromised people. And I'm talking about real immune compromise, not like even some condition like that can cause, for example, multiple sclerosis is an immune compromising condition that can be very serious, but it doesn't seem to have a huge problem with like vaccine response. So we don't have to worry so much for most people with MS. But if you had certain kinds of leukemia, for example, if you were an organ transplant recipient, those folks need a third dose, I think.
Or in Jay's case, you're talking about a second dose, right?
Right. We don't know that. It's being studied. But a booster, just use the general term. So thank you. Yeah. Look, it's not recommended yet, but I'll tell you right now, the data are pretty compelling. So I think that those folks need a booster at some point, I would think, as we're headed. But I agree, like for everyone else, like let's just get as many antibodies as possible worldwide. The caveat to that is that Delta seems to not do great with the one dose of anything in terms of just infection. Now, in terms of hospitalizations, I think it's probably still doing pretty well. But the New England Journal of Medicine article from the other day on this was like, yeah, actually Delta's breaking through after one dose for a lot of these things, including J&J. So I think that, you know, if you got Delta and you had J&J, you're more likely to have symptoms right now than the other ones. But I don't see any evidence yet, fingers crossed, that the hospital or a severe illness has any implication there. But, you know, we're trying to catch a moving train.
I had a couple of people ask in this IG about the J&J vaccine. I think that some people are kind of worried, and they're saying, should we get the other vaccines because the one shot, is it as effective? And I'm curious what you would say to those people, including Susan.
Yeah. So first of all, I'm negative. I dropped it and during the other segment, and I did a test the other day with a positive control, so I know what it's supposed to look like. And I'm neither pregnant nor do I have coronavirus right now, at least contagious. So that's good. The Delta question is certainly interesting. I think that right now still Delta gives you J&J gives you so much protection against critical illness that I feel pretty good about it. If I was someone who got J&J and I was in a high risk area, with tons of virus, I mean, we're talking January levels, and I know I've been exposed, or I know I'd be masking in those situations. If I was going to be hanging out with someone who had leukemia, I'd be masking. But that's not that different than I would have done anyway, right? If you're really worried about a person you're hanging out with, you ought to be worried about giving them influenza during flu season. You ought to be worried about giving them RSV. You ought to be worried about giving them any kind of virus. So it doesn't change it that much. I think that I will say, like, somewhat on the pessimistic side, that maybe in the interest of suppressing variants, at some point we may hear about the need to either augment or mix and match. But keep in mind that J&J probably did better against some of the earlier variants. And so tomorrow we could have a new variant that J&J is great for. And so, we're not going to be getting injected every 2 weeks with a new thing, right? So I think that, at the moment we're still in a safe place with J&J, but I reserve the right to say we'll follow that story carefully.
Someone said, is it moral to start providing boosters to Americans when 94% of some developing countries still haven't gotten one vaccine?
Yeah, I mean, that's a little bit where I'm at with it. And I kind of feel like I'm young and generally healthy. If I got coronavirus unvaccinated, I think I would have a better shot than a lot of people generally. So I think this again hits back on that same thing that I was talking about before, where what you've seen this whole pandemic is that some people are super concerned about everything and want to do every possible thing that they can do to protect themselves. And some we have to think about the whole picture. So my advice, as someone with J&J, is that I just think it's a little bit better to wait for the actual public health guidance, realize that our individual health is totally related to public health, to global health, and that, you might, in the long run, we might be safer making sure that as many people as possible have a small amount of immunity than making sure that we're super protected, because that's what we're seeing right now with what's happening with the Delta variant anyway. I think that even if you are fully vaccinated, because it's still circulating some places, that's why you're at risk. It's more a factor of what's happening in our communities than what's happening with your individual shot.
And the more people who get vaccinated, the fewer variants are likely to emerge. Correct, Jeremy?
Yes, that's right. So it just decreases the amount of replication cycles, we think. I mean, we're learning that. That's what I would highly believe. And look, one other thing that's really important about what Susan was saying is that if we get in a situation where we need a booster, or we're told that certain people need a booster, or if you're on the fence about, well, I'm young, I'm healthy, shouldn't I not get it so that the person in some developing nation should get it? I think that's true on a policy level. If we were suddenly to have 1 billion doses, in the government were to buy 1 billion doses, I would tell the government, please send those to places that need them. But once they're out in the community, it's kind of like saying, I'm not going to eat this dinner because there's some child starving in a part of the world. It's like the food's in front of you, eat it. It's nutritious. Right? It's sort of the same.
To be clear, if Jeremy tells me to get a booster, I'll get a booster.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that. But you know what I mean? There's this idea of I'm not going to get it because I'm depriving somebody else. That's not really how it works. That's how it works on the policy level, and we should advocate for that. But please, if we need a booster, get it if it's available to you. If your kids or your young adults in your life who are on the fence, the correct answer is not, I'm not going to get that vaccine because someone in India needs it. It's not going to get to them. So just don't mix those two questions.
Well, we've been talking for an hour, you guys. So I think and we still have a lot of people who are listening. So thank you all for spending some time talking about this, because I think it is confusing. There's so many sources of information. You get bombarded with things, and in our current media ecosystem, Susan, as you know, it's very hard to figure out what's completely reliable and what's not. For a lot of people, I feel like Slate is very reliable. So I'm not.
Well, we always say at Slate, when Jeremy has written for me at Slate too, is what I'm trying to do is talk to you like you're my friend or my sister, or somebody who I'm just trying to say, okay, here's all the information. Here's what I think you should do with it. And so it's totally been. I mean, people are exhausted. That's a huge part of it. We've been sorting through all of this on our own in so many ways for such a long time. So it's totally understandable that people are feeling anxious and exhausted and oh no, we're going back. But I just think we know so much about how to live with this already that we're okay, and we can bring back some of those tools and use them and keep ourselves and our communities a little bit safer.
I think exercise common sense. I think that figuring out different environments and what you think is safe, and practicing some of the smart things that we have learned to do just to protect yourself and and other people too, because if I got COVID, even being vaccinated, I could spread COVID, right? And that's the last thing I would want to do is make somebody sick. That's so selfish, you know? So hopefully other people will start thinking about their responsibility to their friends and neighbors and all that. But I'm not going to lecture. Anyway, Susan, very nice meeting you. Great job with the piece. I read it this morning on my Apple News. And Jeremy, you're such a sweetheart to spend time with us and to help us understand all this.
Anytime. Two of my favorite people. I mean, honestly, Susan has edited over 50 pieces that I wrote for Slate over the years. So we go back. And you and I have done this a bunch, so I'd love doing it.
It was a message from Jeremy in like February of 2020 that made me start to take coronavirus seriously. And I slacked like our editor-in-chief being like, I think that we're going to have to start rethinking coverage like this week based on what Jeremy is telling me. So
Susan and I were doing a piece about whether or not Bernie might have another heart attack. And that was in February. I thought the answer was he probably was at risk. I was worried, you know.
Have another heart attack?
I was worried that he might. What were the odds? Because he was like, at that point, he was like going to win possibly, right? And I was like, look at the numbers. Like his likelihood of having another heart attack while he's president are kind of high. That was like on our minds. And then it was like, and then it was like, I think we better get over to coronavirus. And funny thing, Susan, the guy whose research we really relied on for that Bernie piece is Harlan Krumholtz. And Harlan and I have become like very, very close. And we published multiple articles this year, including in the Journal of the American Medical Association. So Harlan and I have like, from that piece, have like become like collaborators. He's like a mentor to me. He's amazing. So thanks. Thank you.
0% surprising to me, Jeremy.
Just before we go, I'm gonna link to some of these good articles, including yours, Susan, in my stories on Instagram if people are interested in digging in for themselves. And also wanted to tell everybody, you got to spread the word that people need to sign up for my newsletter, Wake Up Call. Susan, can you do a solid for your sister, Katie?
I can
sign up.
You got it.
Just go to Jeremy reads it every morning in his inbox, and we're going to have a whole piece of this tomorrow on the website. So blah, blah, blah. I'm trying to start a business here, people, you know, but we started trying to keep it going. So thank you guys so much.
Going places, I think you're going places.
Okay. I'll talk to you soon. Susan.
Thank you. So nice to meet you.
Okay. Nice to meet you. Bye, everybody.
Bye.